The skies above Seoul darkened as Professor Kim Tae-ho stared at his monitor in disbelief. The anomalous readings had persisted for weeks, but now there was no denying it. Something massive was approaching Earth, and it wasn't natural. "Director Park, you need to see this," Tae-ho called, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Park Ji-woo, director of the Korean Aerospace Research Institute, leaned over his shoulder. Her expression hardened as she processed the data. "How many?" she asked. "At least 500 vessels, maybe more. They're using some kind of quantum communication we can barely detect." Ji-woo's hand gripped the back of Tae-ho's chair. The observatory room fell silent except for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. Outside the window, rain began to fall over the Seoul skyline, drops racing down the glass like tears. "We need to alert the president," she said finally. "And the UN Security Council." Tae-ho nodded. "I've prepared the data package. The trajectory calculations show they'll reach Earth orbit in approximately 3 weeks. Within hours, governments worldwide received the same alarming data. In Washington, London, Beijing, and Moscow, leaders gathered in emergency sessions. The Thraxian Empire, as they called themselves in their intercepted communications, had one simple message: Earth would be theirs. News of the approaching fleet leaked despite government efforts to maintain calm. People flooded streets across the globe, some in panic, others in prayer. Markets crashed. Militaries mobilized. At the Korean Aerospace Research Institute, Tae-ho worked without rest. His small apartment near the facility sat empty for days as he analyzed the alien communications. The patterns were unlike anything humans had created. Signals that seemed to arrive before they were sent, data that existed in multiple states simultaneously. "You need to sleep," Ji-woo said, placing a cup of coffee beside him. It was their 5th night of continuous work. "How can I?" he asked, not looking up from his screens. "In 3 weeks, everything changes." 2 days later, Tae-ho and Ji-woo found themselves on a military transport to New York. The United Nations had called an emergency global summit. Representatives from every nation gathered in a room heavy with fear. Ji-woo presented their findings with remarkable composure. "The vessels are approximately 2 kilometers in length each. Their technology far exceeds our own. Conventional weapons will likely be ineffective." The room erupted in arguments about military responses, proposed surrender terms, and evacuation plans. No one had a solution. Professor Lee Sun-ho, a quantum physicist from Daejeon University who had been invited to join the Korean delegation, sat quietly in the corner. While others debated, he studied the signal patterns on his tablet. "Excuse me," he finally said, standing. His voice was soft, but carried across the room. "I believe I'd noticed something unusual in the transmission patterns." The room fell silent as Sun-ho walked to the main display. He connected his tablet and showed a visualization of the alien communications, pulsing, shifting patterns that seemed to fold in on themselves. "There's a temporal anomaly in their communication signature," he explained, pointing to recurring patterns in the data. "It's almost as if their technology exists partially outside our timeline." Dr. Kang Hae-jin, a theoretical physicist who had worked with Sun-ho for years, moved closer to the display. Her eyes widened as she recognized what her colleague had discovered. "That could be their weakness," she whispered, loud enough for those nearby to hear. The room stirred with confusion. The American Secretary of Defense leaned forward. "Explain." Hae-jin stepped forward, her voice stronger now. "These signals show that the Thraxian ships don't fully exist in our present moment. They operate partially in what we might call a different time phase. It's how they can travel such vast distances." "And how does that help us?" asked the Chinese representative. Sun-ho and Hae-jin exchanged looks. "Their partial existence in our timeline might make them vulnerable," Sun-ho explained. "If we could create a temporal disruption field tuned to their specific quantum signature, we might be able to erase them from our timeline completely." Hae-jin finished. The room fell silent. The proposal was so far beyond conventional thinking that many couldn't grasp it, but Taeho and Ji-woo understood immediately. "You're suggesting we could make them never arrive at all?" Ji-woo asked. "In theory." Hai-jin nodded. "We would need to develop technology that doesn't exist yet, but the principles are sound." "How long would it take?" asked the Secretary General. Sun Ho looked grim. 3 weeks, if we have every quantum physicist on Earth working together. And even then. "We'll do it," Ji-woo said firmly. "The Korean government offers our full resources." One by one, other nations joined. Within hours, a global scientific task force was formed. 3 days later, research facilities around the world were connected in a vast network. Taeho found himself working alongside scientists he had previously only read about in journals. Theoretical ideas that had once seemed impossible were now their only hope. At night, when he finally slept for a few hours, Taeho dreamed of the stars. Not as they were now, threatened by an alien armada, but as they had been when he was a child, full of wonder and possibility. He woke each morning determined to see those stars again. As the Thraxian fleet crossed the orbit of Mars, the scientists continued their desperate work. Earth's fate hung in the balance, dependent on a theory that most couldn't understand and a solution that had never been tried before. The underground facility in Gangwon Province hummed with activity. 2 weeks after the discovery of the approaching Thraxian fleet, scientists from around the world worked in unified purpose. The facility, carved deep into the mountains, was a marvel of engineering. Built in secret over decades as a nuclear shelter, now repurposed as humanity's last hope. Dr. Kang Hai-jin stood at the center of the main research hall. Her small frame seemed to grow as she addressed the assembled team of brilliant minds. The dark circles under her eyes testified to her lack of sleep, but her voice remained strong. The Thraxians use quantum entanglement not just for communication, but for their entire propulsion system, she explained, pointing to the simulation hovering in 3D above the central table. Every ship in their fleet is linked at a quantum level. The hologram showed hundreds of red dots moving in perfect formation. Lines of blue light connected them in a complex web. "So if one ship moves, they all know about it instantly," said a British physicist. "Exactly," Hai-jin nodded. "They function almost as a single organism." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Traditional weapons would be nearly useless against such coordination. Even if Earth's militaries could destroy some ships, the rest would adapt immediately. Choi Do-yun sat quietly in the corner. At 26, he was the youngest person in the room. His uncombed hair and wrinkled clothes made him look like a lost university student rather than one of Korea's most brilliant minds. "What if we create a temporal disruption field?" Do-yun spoke up suddenly. "Something that targets that specific quantum signature." All eyes turned to him. He stood and walked to the hologram, moving with unexpected confidence. "Their ships exist partially outside our timeline. What if we push them all the way out?" He manipulated the simulation, causing the red dots to fade and vanish. Hai-jin's eyes widened. "Do-yun, that's impossible," he finished with a small smile. "I was going to say brilliant." For the next 5 days, they worked without stopping. The facility became a small city. People slept on cots between work shifts. Meals were eaten at workstations. The outside world faded away as equations filled whiteboards, and simulations ran continuously. Park Ji-woo arrived on the 6th day, bringing news from the surface. "Military preparations continue worldwide," she reported in a briefing. "Missile systems, fighter squadrons, and hastily built plasma weapons based on partial understanding of the alien technology. The American and Chinese forces have created prototype energy weapons." "Will they work?" asked a Canadian engineer. Ji-woo's expression answered before her words. "Against normal ships, perhaps. Against technology like the Thraxians have, it would be like throwing rocks at a tsunami." The room grew tense. Every person there understood the stakes. If their work failed, Humanity would face extinction or enslavement. Hai-Jin stood. Conventional weapons will fail. Our only hope is the quantum disruption grid. She revealed their progress, a system that could potentially create a field around Earth that would disrupt the specific quantum signature of Thraxian technology. But we're missing something, she admitted. The power requirements are beyond anything we can generate. That night, as most of the team slept, Hai-Jin sat alone in the observation dome. The glass ceiling revealed a clear night sky filled with stars. Somewhere among them, the Thraxian fleet approached, still invisible to the naked eye, but drawing closer every second. Du Yun found her there. He sat beside her without speaking. "I'm afraid we're going to fail," she finally said. "We won't," he replied simply. "The power requirements. I've been thinking about that," he interrupted. "What's the most powerful quantum computer we know of?" Hai-Jin looked confused. "The new system in Beijing, maybe, or the American Quantum Network." "No," Du Yun tapped his temple. "The human brain." The next morning, Hai-Jin stood before the UN Security Council via secure video link. Government leaders looked back at her with desperate hope. Human consciousness interacts with quantum fields in ways the Thraxians couldn't possibly understand, she told them. "We can use that to our advantage." She explained their discovery, that human brains naturally process quantum information in ways machines cannot replicate. A single human mind contained enough quantum processing power to affect particles at a fundamental level. "We need volunteers," she said. "People willing to connect to our system. Their combined consciousness could provide the missing element in our defense grid." The request was unusual, but desperation breeds acceptance. Within hours, volunteers from around the world were being screened. The quantum disruption grid would have a human component, thousands of minds working together to save their planet. As the facility adapted to this new approach, engineers created interface systems while doctors worried about the physical strain on participants. Du Yun tested the first prototype himself. His body convulsed as his mind connected directly to the quantum field. "Du Yun," Hai-Jin cried out, rushing to disconnect him. He grabbed her wrist, stopping her. His eyes were wide, seeing something beyond the room. "I saw them," he whispered when the test ended. "The Thraxians. They're not what we expected." "What do you mean?" "They're afraid," he said. "They're running from something worse." This revelation changed nothing about their approach, but added a layer of complexity to their understanding. The Thraxians weren't just conquerors. They were refugees seeking a new home at any cost. As the Thraxian fleet passed the orbit of Earth's moon, the quantum disruption grid neared completion. Humanity prepared for its greatest test. Success meant survival. Failure meant the end of human civilization. In the facility beneath the mountains, Hai-Jin looked at their creation with a mixture of hope and fear. Everything depended on what happened next. The Sea of Japan glittered under the morning sun. 3 ships, a Korean destroyer, a Japanese research vessel, and a small unmarked boat, formed a triangle on the calm waters. Above them, military aircraft circled watchfully. On the unmarked boat, Hai-Jin checked her equipment one final time. The quantum device they had built over sleepless weeks hummed quietly on the deck. It wasn't much to look at. A metal box the size of a small refrigerator with a tangle of wires and cooling systems attached. "All monitors are on," Park Ji-woo reported from the destroyer. Her voice crackled through the radio. "Satellite feed is clear. We're ready when you are." Du Yun stood beside Hai-Jin, his fingers moving rapidly over a tablet. "Power level stable. Quantum field aligned." Tae-ho placed a hand on Hai-Jin's shoulder. "This is just a test. If it doesn't work, we try again." Hai-Jin nodded, but they all knew the truth. Time was running out. The Thraxian fleet would reach Earth in less than a week. This test needed to succeed. "Launch the drone," she ordered. From the Japanese vessel, a sleek black drone rose into the air. Unlike standard military drones, this one contained special equipment that mimicked the quantum signature of Thraxian ships, at least as best as humans could reproduce it. The drone hovered 100 meters above the water, then began to move in patterns similar to those observed in the approaching alien fleet. "Drone is stable," came the Japanese scientist's voice. "All systems normal." Hai-Jin took a deep breath. "Activating QDG in 3, 2, 1. She pressed her hand against the quantum sensor pad. Du-Yun did the same. The device began to pulse with blue light, subtle at first, then growing brighter. On screens across all 3 ships, they watched as the drone continued its flight pattern. For 10 seconds, nothing seemed to happen. Then, without warning or visible effect, the drone vanished. Not exploded, not fell, not malfunctioned. It simply ceased to exist. "Where did it go?" asked the Japanese scientist. "Did it crash?" Du-Yun stared at his readings in wonder. "It's gone. Not destroyed, but removed from our timeline." "It worked," Du-Yun whispered in awe, barely loud enough for others to hear. Silence fell across the radio channels as everyone processed what they had witnessed. Then cheers erupted from all 3 vessels. Tae-ho hugged Hai-Jin tightly. "You did it." She pulled away, her face serious. "We did it on a small scale. Now we need to make it work for an entire alien fleet." News of the successful test spread rapidly through government channels. Within hours, leaders worldwide gave approval for the full deployment of the quantum disruption grid. The next days passed in a blur of activity. Satellites were hurriedly reconfigured, creating a web network capable of generating a planetary quantum field. Every major city became a node in the grid, with Seoul serving as the primary control center. In homes and schools across the world, people watched the skies with growing fear. The Thraxian advanced scouts were now visible from Earth's telescopes. Massive ships unlike anything humans had ever built. Their dark forms occasionally blocked out stars, causing ripples of panic. Militaries moved into position, though few held hope that conventional weapons would be effective. The quantum disruption grid was humanity's true defense, though most people knew little about how it worked. In Seoul, the National Science Building had been transformed into the primary control center. Banks of computers filled rooms that once held administrative offices. Scientists and engineers from dozens of countries worked side by side, all personal and national rivalries set aside in the face of extinction. Hai-Jin hadn't slept in 30 hours. She sat in the main control room, surrounded by screens showing the status of QDG nodes worldwide. Red lights indicated problems. Too many red lights. "New York node is having power fluctuations," an American engineer reported. "They're working to stabilize." "The Mumbai connection keeps dropping," added another technician. "We need that node or there will be a hole in the grid." Du-Yun entered with coffee and placed a cup beside Hai-Jin. "You need to rest." "Later," she said, not looking up from her screens. "The system can't run without you," he said quietly. "And you can't run without sleep." She finally looked at him, allowing the exhaustion to show on her face. 4 hours. Wake me if anything changes." While Hai-Jin slept in a makeshift cot, Tae-ho and Du-Yun continued calibrating the Seoul node. As the heart of the grid, its settings would determine the effectiveness of the entire system. "Something isn't right," Tae-ho muttered, staring at the readings. "The quantum signatures aren't aligning properly." Du-Yun frowned. "Let me see." He studied the data, then began typing rapidly. "We've been assuming their ships are all on the same temporal phase, but look at these patterns." Tae-ho leaned closer. "They're slightly out of sync with each other." "Exactly. Each ship creates its own temporal bubble." When Hai-Jin returned 4 hours later, Du-Yun and Tae-ho were waiting with excitement barely contained. "We found something," Tae-ho said. While recalibrating the Seoul node, Hai-Jin studied their findings. Her eyes widened. "Their technology creates a temporal echo. They exist slightly out of phase with our timeline. That's how they travel such vast distances." She began making adjustments to the main system. "If we can amplify that echo, we could erase them before they ever arrive." Taiho finished. The realization changed everything. The quantum disruption grid wouldn't just push the Thraxians away. It would remove them from Earth's timeline completely. They would never have existed in Earth's past, present, or future. As dawn broke over Seoul, Hai-Jin made the final adjustments to the system. The Thraxian fleet was now visible to the naked eye. Dark shapes against the morning sky that grew larger by the hour. Humanity's moment of truth had arrived. In control rooms across the planet, scientists prepared to activate the grid. Whether it would save them or fail them would be known very soon. The Thraxian fleet entered Earth orbit on a Tuesday morning. Billions of people looked up at once as darkness fell across major cities. Their ships, dark against the blue sky, deployed in invasion formation. Each vessel was massive, kilometers long, shaped like elongated diamonds with jagged edges that seemed to shimmer between states of existence. In New York, crowds gathered in Times Square staring upward. In Tokyo, traffic stopped as people stood in streets. In Cairo, mothers held children close as shadows passed overhead. Deep in the bunker beneath Gangwon Mountains, Hai-Jin studied the final readings. Her hands moved quickly over control panels as she made adjustments to the quantum disruption grid. Around her, 50 scientists from around the world worked at their stations. "The quantum link is holding," Du-Yun reported. His voice remained calm despite the sweat on his forehead. All global nodes reporting ready status. Taeho monitored the worldwide network. Mumbai node stabilize. New York power issues resolved. The grid is complete. On the main screen, a map showed Earth covered in a web of blue lines connecting bright points of light. Each point represented a QDG node, 367 in total. "Incoming transmission," announced a communications officer. "It's broadcasting on all frequencies, all devices." Screens throughout the bunker flickered. A figure appeared, humanoid but clearly alien. Its skin was pale blue with patterns that shifted like oil on water. Multiple eyes blinked in sequence across a wide face. The Thraxian Emperor's message was broadcast worldwide. "Your planet is now property of the Thraxian Empire. Surrender or face extinction." The voice was deep and seemed to echo inside listeners' heads rather than come through speakers. People around the world clutched their ears in pain. "Your resources will serve our needs," the Emperor continued. "Those who submit will be permitted to live as workers. Those who resist will be eliminated. You have 1 hour to dismantle your defenses and prepare for occupation." The transmission ended. For a moment, silence filled the bunker. Then the secure line to the United Nations Emergency Council activated. Park Ji-woo's face appeared on screen. Once the director of the Korean Aerospace Research Institute, she now coordinated global defense. "Dr. Kang," Ji-woo said formally, "the Security Council has voted. We will not surrender." Hai-Jin nodded. "We're ready." "Then you are authorized to proceed. May your ancestors watch over us all." Ji-woo looked directly into the camera. "Activate the grid." In the bunker, Hai-Jin turned to her team. "This is what we've prepared for. Once activated, we'll have approximately 3 minutes before the system overloads. That should be enough time." She moved to the central console where a large panel glowed with soft blue light. This was the quantum-sensitive interface, designed to connect human consciousness directly to the grid. "Everyone to your stations," she ordered. Around the room, scientists took positions at similar panels. Each person would contribute their consciousness to the quantum field, amplifying its effect. Hai-Jin pressed her hand against the quantum-sensitive panel. The entire team did the same at their stations. Immediately, Hai-Jin felt a strange sensation, as if her mind stretched beyond her body. She could sense the others connecting too, their thoughts humming alongside hers like instruments tuning before a symphony. "Quantum field activating," Du-Yun reported, his voice sounding distant though he stood nearby. "Field strength at 30% and rising." Outside the bunker, across Earth, the air began to shimmer with an effect invisible to human eyes, but detectable on instruments. The quantum field expanded, reaching upward toward the Thraxian fleet. In orbit, the alien ships detected the disturbance. They began to move, weapons systems powering up. Beams of energy shot toward Earth, but they dispersed strangely before reaching the atmosphere, the particles scattering as the quantum field affected their trajectory. Field strength at 60%, called Taiho. First contact with Thraxian ships established. Hai-Jin focused her mind, visualizing the temporal echo they had discovered. In her mind's eye, she could almost see the Thraxian ships vibrating between moments in time. Across Earth, millions of people watched as the alien ships began to shimmer. The effect started slowly, a slight blurring around the edges of each vessel. Then it intensified. The massive ships seemed to become transparent, then solid again, then transparent. The Thraxian technology, dependent on their quantum signature, became unstable. Their existence in Earth's timeline began to unravel. "It's working," Du Yun breathed, watching the monitors as ship after ship began to fade. On the command channel, reports flooded in from around the world. Beijing reporting visual confirmation. Ships disappearing. London node stable. Targets vanishing above the city. Rio Station confirms fleet dissolution. In the bunker, red warning lights began to flash. The system was drawing more power than any human creation ever had before. Grid failures cascaded across the world as the quantum field demanded energy. "Power levels critical," warned an engineer. "We have less than a minute before system failure." Hai-Jin pressed her hand harder against the panel. "Keep the field stable. We need to erase their temporal anchor points completely." Through the quantum connection, she could feel the Thraxians' confusion and fear. Their ships, their entire technology, was based on existing partially outside normal time. Now that very advantage was being used against them. "The Emperor's ship is still stable," Taiho reported urgently. "It has stronger temporal shielding." Hai-Jin focused all her attention on that final ship. Through the quantum link, she directed the others to do the same. Their collective consciousness surged through the grid, targeting the massive vessel at the center of the fleet. For a moment, nothing happened. The Emperor's ship remained solid while others faded around it. Then, with a flash visible even in daylight, the final ship began to distort. Its edges blurred, its form wavered, and slowly it began to fade from existence. 30 seconds to system failure," the engineer called out. "Almost there," Hai-Jin whispered, her body shaking with the strain. The Emperor's ship continued to fade until it was barely visible, a ghost ship hanging in the sky. 10 seconds. With a final surge of the quantum field, the ship vanished completely. The sensors went silent. The skies above Earth were empty. The Thraxian fleet never landed. To most of humanity, it appeared as if the ships had simply vanished. Here one moment, gone the next. News outlets struggled to explain what had happened. Religious leaders called it divine intervention. Military officials claimed classified weapons had been deployed successfully. But physicists understood the truth. They had been erased from Earth's timeline. In the days after what became known as the vanishing, Hai-Jin slept for nearly 40 hours straight. The mental strain of connecting to the quantum grid had left her and the other scientists physically exhausted. When she finally woke in the recovery ward of Seoul National Hospital, Taiho was sitting beside her bed. "Did we succeed?" she asked, her voice rough from disuse. He smiled, eyes bright with tears. "Completely. There's no trace of them." "And the others? The team?" "All recovering. Du Yun woke yesterday. He's already asking when he can get back to work." Hai-Jin laughed weakly. "Of course he is." Outside her window, Seoul looked unchanged. People walked the streets, cars moved through traffic, life continued. Few understood how close they had come to extinction. 2 weeks later, Hai-Jin returned to the research facility in Gangwon Province. The place felt different now, quieter, but filled with purpose. Many of the international scientists had returned to their home countries, but a core team remained. Do Yun greeted her with excitement. "You need to see this," he said, leading her to the main lab. Inside, researchers studied strange objects that shimmered on examination tables. They seemed to fade in and out of solidity, sometimes becoming transparent before stabilizing again. "What are they?" Hai-Jin asked. "Quantum echoes," Tahoe explained, joining them. "When we erased the Thraxians from our timeline, fragments of their technology remained, echoes of what might have been. These echoes proved invaluable. Though incomplete and unstable, they provided insights into science centuries beyond human development. Within weeks, research teams around the world began studying these fragments, learning their secrets. Engineers discovered principles that revolutionized energy production. Medical researchers found ways to use quantum fields to heal previously untreatable conditions. Physicists gained new understanding of the fundamental nature of reality. But the most important discovery came from Hai-Jin's team. They found that the connection between human consciousness and quantum fields was not just a tool they had used out of necessity. It was a fundamental aspect of reality that the Thraxians had never understood. Their technology was more advanced. Hai-Jin explained to a gathering of scientists 3 months after the vanishing. But they approached quantum physics as a purely mechanical process. They never discovered the connection to consciousness. This uniquely human advantage became the foundation for Earth's next great leap forward. Within months, research teams began developing new technologies that merged quantum physics with the unique properties of human consciousness. New computing systems emerged that responded to thought. Communication devices that connected minds directly. Sensors that could detect intentions and emotions across vast distances. The world changed rapidly, but not without challenges. Nations argued over access to the new technologies. Corporations sought to control and profit from them. Philosophers and religious leaders debated the implications for human nature. 6 months after the attempted invasion, Hai-Jin stood before the newly formed Earth Defense Council. Representatives from every nation gathered in the United Nations headquarters in New York, their faces solemn as they considered the future. "The Thraxians won't return. They never existed in our timeline now," she explained, her voice carrying across the hushed chamber. "From our perspective, they never approached Earth, never threatened us. The invasion never happened." A representative from Brazil raised her hand. "But we remember it. We all saw their ships." "Yes," Hai-Jin nodded. "Our consciousness exists outside the timeline manipulation. We remember what might have been. It's a paradox, but one we must live with." She touched a control panel, and a holographic display appeared above the center of the room. It showed stars, planets, and strange energy signatures moving between them. "But our quantum scans have detected other civilizations. We're not alone in the universe." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had survived one encounter, but others would come. Tahoe, now heading humanity's first interstellar research program, stood beside Hai-Jin. He nodded solemnly. "Next time, we'll be ready. And perhaps we'll be the ones making first contact." In the months that followed, humanity united in a way it never had before. The quantum defense grid became permanent, a shield protecting Earth from temporal and physical threats. But it was just the beginning. Du Yun led a team developing the first ships capable of quantum travel, vessels that could move through space by shifting partially outside normal time, much as the Thraxians had done. Hai-Jin continued her research into consciousness, discovering ways to extend human perception across vast distances. 1 year after the vanishing, Hai-Jin stood on the roof of the research facility, looking up at the stars. The night was clear, the Milky Way a bright band across the sky. Somewhere out there were other worlds, other civilizations, some friendly, some not. Tahoe joined her, standing quietly at her side. "Do you ever wonder what happened to them?" he asked. "The Thraxians, in whatever timeline they exist in now." Hai-Jin considered this. "Sometimes we know they were running from something they feared enough to invade other worlds. Maybe someday we'll find out what it was. Maybe, she smiled. But this time, we'll approach as explorers, not conquerors. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. Now they looked to the stars not with fear, but with determination and hope. The end.